Most people probably look at social and just think it's posting. But when you hear someone like Jacob Gaynor talk about it, it's way more about storytelling, personality, and how people actually connect. He's someone who kind of fell into it, wanted to be a journalist or a comedian, ended up studying sports media, then got a shot at running socials for a local club, and now he's gone AFL, GWS, and down in Tassie helping build the Devils from the ground up. And the interesting part is he doesn't overcomplicate it. He talks about social as a place for people to connect, have a laugh, and actually feel like they're part of something. Showing players as people, not just athletes, bringing fans inside the four walls and finding different ways to tell those stories. So this chat gets into all of that. How he thinks about content, how he gets buy-in, how he balances being prepared but still reactive, and just why the human side of this stuff matters so much. This episode is proudly brought to you by Sked Social. Let's get into it. Jacob, thank you so much for jumping on the Scene podcast, mate. Obviously, big fan of your work at the Tassie Devils now. Big few years, so excited to dive in and have a chat about all things content.
Thank you, mate. Thank you for having me.
Obviously, keen to understand like how your journey into content actually like got started. Like, what was the thing where you were just like, this is something that I could do with my life?
Yeah, I got pretty lucky, to be honest. I kind of fell into it. When I was growing up, I always wanted to be either a journalist or a comedian. And obviously your parents they encourage the creative side of things, but the journalistic career path is probably safer and more financially secure. And so I went through school and always had an interest in both, and went to university in Canberra, and they luckily enough had a new program or a new course called Sports Media and Communications. So started doing that, and my best mate played for the Canberra Demons in the NEFL at the time as well. So it was kind of just a way to get a little bit of experience and exposure at that kind of thing, and kind of fell into the social side of things. I think social media wasn't necessarily a massive career pathway at that point. It was still kind of starting out. Clubs probably only would have had one or two people running the entirety of their media base. So it wasn't something I necessarily thought was going to be the avenue for me, but got really fortunate that through university, the Canberra Demons were like, yep, come along and kind of just run our socials. There's no pressure. It hadn't been done before. So again, it was kind of a free hit in doing that. And social media was that brilliant little thing for me, I guess, an avenue to combine both my passion for journalism and comedy. And you kind of, find a way that I don't think it necessarily needs to be that traditional match report, rehab report. I think it's gone past that. So, yeah, forever grateful that the Canberra Demons gave me that opportunity. And again, my career, to be honest, it's all luck. I fell into a role then at the AFL in Sydney when they approached me, and I was there for about 18 months, and then the Giants tapped me on the shoulder and asked me to go over there. So spent 5 years at the Giants, and obviously recently again to Tassie with the Devils. So been really, really fortunate, to be honest, and I owe a lot to the early days in Canberra.
I love it, man. I think like how you think about socials is it's a fun place. Like, doesn't have to be so serious. And I think like with what you've done at GWS, there's no real like legacy energy, like you really had that challenger approach where you could just sort of go and do your thing. And I think that's like built through trust. Hey, so it's like, how do you get that buy-in from people rather than have all those like layers of approval and stuff where you can just like react fast and pump shit out? Like, I'm sure that's like an important part of about what you do rather than just like posting.
Oh, absolutely. I think it has to be honest. I think the way that social media has evolved now is it's such a nice outlet for the sporting community to come together. Obviously, you're going to have some negative things across social media. That's just naturally the way it's progressed. But I think social media is such a nice avenue for people to go and connect and have a laugh. I think at the end of the day, it's all, sport. People can take it quite seriously at times. So if you can have a laugh and, separate a little bit of the result from the person and things like that, then it's doing its job.
I love that, man. And I think like people connect with humor, don't they? It's like, it's a way to show that, hey, you've got that trust with that player or that person that you can just post stuff like that. And that's kind of like approved. I feel like that just like ears prick up in the audience where it's like, hey, that feels like a cool place to be. And I think like socials and content now plays like a big part of like identity. Like I feel like that with footy clubs, it's like making the most around like what you've got. So down here where I am, it's Geelong. It's like you sell the Surf Coast. It's a different energy than other things. So it's like looking at what you do have, hey, and then just like building it around it, and how you showcase that is through content and socials.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the really important part is combining social media with a bit of humor and that light-hearted stuff, it not only showcases your brand and what the club means, but it also showcases players' personalities. And I think at the end of the day, a lot of people just think they're athletes, but there's so much more than that. And some of them, they're incredibly unique. And that's not even athletes; it could be staff, it could be fans telling their stories as well. At the end of the day, like social media is a platform to storytell. Like you're a storyteller, so different ways you can find to tell the stories of different people involved with the organization or the club or the brand or whatever you're working with. Um, I think that's a real positive thing and a real strength of social media.
Yeah, and I think like you don't even have to be the best player anymore. Like you could be like a professional player, but it's like the outside interest of what's going to make people care. Hey, so if you're into music and bands and you're seeing going to gigs and you're capturing that and you're showcasing and documenting that, people will like you because you're into the same sort of stuff as them. So they'll feel like they want to support you, and then you'll get like that kind of like support and connection piece. And I think like that just like helps the team and brand inevitably. Hey,
Oh, absolutely. I think there are so many examples already within, especially the AFL, which is where I'm working with. You can see like Lipinski with his fashion, or I think probably the best example would be Christian Petrarca with the food and on track. He's built an incredible brand, and it's arguably bigger than anything else. So he, alongside a lot of other AFL players and staff members and things like that, they've built some incredible things just by being themselves and not kind of falling into the trap of just being a normal athlete. So I think even at the Giants, you had Cooper Hamilton who took a risk, I guess, and put his hand up and wanted to do things differently and be part of content and be a little bit cheeky and put himself out there. Um, and now he's 3 years off an AFL list, I think, and he's thriving. He's doing his own content, he's doing different things, and he's had so many opportunities purely because he put himself out there and didn't want to just be the normal AFL player.
and if you're passionate, you can control that. Like I feel like with footy, a lot of the times it's out of your control. So it's like, what's something that I can do that I can just wake up every day and just like get behind? And I think like the hard part is, I suppose, and why you're so good is like, how do you translate and communicate that? Like we know so many cool people. It's like, oh, if more people just saw that, they would love that. You know what I mean? So it's like, how do you like showcase that? Is that what's kind of running through your brain a lot of the time?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are so many different, I guess, pillars within social media, especially at a football club, where not only are you telling the club story, but you do want to showcase these players. And especially during my time at GWS, where obviously they were in a market that's not a traditional market or necessarily a football market. So how can you use these athletes to stand out and be different and showcase either how diverse they are or what they're interested in or just little things like that. And you kind of take away a little bit of that um, facade, I guess, that these athletes probably naturally have. So at the Giants, we focus a lot on kind of stitching them up and showcasing their personalities or highlighting how bad they are at parking or whatever it may have been. You just naturally, it kind of brings fans inside the four walls. They get to see what the athlete's like as a person, not just a player.
I love that. And I think like when I see the stuff that you're doing at GWS, I feel like it influenced a bit of an attitude, you know what I mean? Like around the players seem to be edgy and a bit like it seemed a bit punk rock, where it was like everyone's zigging and you guys are zagging, and I feel like the risk paid off and kind of everyone's behind it where they like respect and they're interested. So I feel like content can really influence like an attitude or you know what I mean? Like a perception on how people feel about you.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's probably a credit to not only the media team, but the players as well to put themselves out there and to kind of understand, I guess, a lot of them understood because of the market that the Giants are in, that they needed to do things differently. And they were like, oh, we can do this. Like, I think a lot of them had come from WA or Victoria where they're like, oh, no, but this is what clubs do. And it's like, well, we're not in the traditional markets. Like, let's do things differently because we can. And I think that'll translate directly to Tasmania as well. We're a startup club where we can do things so differently and we can do things that other clubs haven't done before because we get a fresh start, which is super exciting and probably what drew me down here, to be honest. Like, it's a blank canvas and that's incredibly exciting.
Oh man. And like it's got so much history as well. And I think like when we think about Tassie, I think one of the things was like the two different states, like Launceston and Hobart or whatever, how they're going to go and support that. So it's like, how do you attract the fan that support? You know what I mean? Like, how do you garner those people's attention? And I think there's so many different ways you can do it. So from a creative point of view, I'm sure your brain's probably exploding. I'm sure you've just got a bunch of stuff prepared and ready to go. But like, is that the best part about being a creative? Is like this opportunity here where it's like literally a blank canvas, resources, and like even a bit like relevance now. You know what I mean? Like people knowing who you are and having a bit of a profile. Like I feel like it's a pretty like awesome spot that you're in at the moment.
Yeah, I think. Well, to be honest, I think that's what drew me down here. Is there's so many unique and different challenges at Tasmania. I think I loved my time at GWS, and I think we built something really strong. And I hope they continue to do things differently and push the boundaries a little bit. And I think there'll be a mix of that in Tasmania. Again, like I think you land on the history side of things where we didn't have that at GWS. There was no history in Western Sydney, of, especially in the AFL market. So coming down here, it's something I'm having to learn. Like I'm not from the area. There's a lot of people that are from Tasmania here that aren't necessarily from the mainland, as they call it. I didn't even know that was a term. But I'm a mainlander. But I think there's so many different stories to tell, and there are challenges. You know, how do you profile these VFL athletes for 2 years? How do you showcase behind the scenes what the club's building without giving too much away in terms of staff and players? Or how do you remain relevant on the mainland, essentially? Like, I know we've had an incredible start to the VFL season, like undefeated, so we're still really relevant, but obviously a loss and form will dip. Naturally, that's just part of the game. So how do you stay relevant on the mainland, and how do you stay in that AFL conversation for 2 years when you're essentially not in the AFL? Which is incredibly exciting. And I think there's a little bit of a mix there of that Giants tone of voice where you can be cheeky and say things, because essentially you've got 2 years free, really. Like no one can beat you. Whereas then you've also got that story side of things to tell. Like, how can you lean on history and learn a little bit more? And I think, we already, in round 2 against Port Melbourne in the VFL, we already brought back an old trophy that they used to play for, and that meant a lot to a lot of the older people down here. I think so. It's nice, quite a nice mix already of that cheeky side of things, which I think is the strongest thing of social media, and that's what's going to bring new fans and engage people down here. But then also, you've got a story to tell and history to kind of respect.
And Tassie's cool, man. Like Mona, we were just talking about, like it's got that edgy vibe where it's like I feel like it's a bit futuristic, it's a bit different, and I think like that in itself, like I don't know, it just attracts like a coolness, and I think like that like part of the vibe and why people would want to join. And I think like even you going there, I think it signals value in a content role, where people are saying, all right, now these big businesses are seeing this position and what you do as really high value and can actually like influence a lot of what they're trying to build.
Yeah, I've said it for the last few weeks. I've had a lot of mates that are around Australia now, but have checked in and seeing how things are going. And to be honest, I'm absolutely loving it. And there's like, I grew up in Canberra where, a lot of people kind of have these negative thoughts about Canberra and there's nothing to do. And they kind of liken it to Hobart a little bit, or Launceston. There's too much to do. I can't get to it all yet. And I'm absolutely, the people here are so like lovely. Everyone says hello every morning. Like, first few weeks after living in Sydney, for someone who's a bit rattled, oh, hey, how you going? But no, loving it so far. It's great, and I think it will end up being a destination for a lot of elite athletes.
100%, man. 100%. Talking about like the socials and content role, like we know pace and reactiveness is like the key. Like speaking to people like Dan Gorringe and him talking about that is like you got to be like on it, and that's part of like why things go really, really well. But like the pressure to sort of have that pace and know that it does the good stuff, but also setting boundaries. Like I'm sure if you're out like if you've got an appointment or something, like you're itching to see what's going on in the phone so you can sort of react. I'm sure you've had to put in boundaries and stuff as well, while you know how important that is.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think it's kind of just naturally how it progresses. I think I've learned to love the flying aspect of being part of a club, because it does force you to put your phone away a little bit in terms of you can't do anything. So I've learnt to love that kind of thing. I think because it is addictive, really. Like you're always on. You can't really switch off. You don't want to. Like, it infuriates me if I miss something that another club's jumped on quickly, because I'm like, oh, that was an opportunity. So like, social media is just full of opportunities. Every day there's something that you could do. Again, that's the challenge of trying to stay relevant in this market, especially at the moment. So, yeah, it is a challenge, but I think it's a fine line between getting the balance right with work-life balance. And to be honest, it's probably something I haven't nailed, and it's probably something I'm going to have to continue to work on for the next part of my career, to be honest.
It's hard. Like burnout, I think, is a result of just like success, and you just like you want to keep things going, and you just like and you love it too. So it's like, why do I want to stop? Like, I want to be scrolling. I want like it's escaping, but learning as well. Are you somewhat like
Mm.
how do you like take notes? Like when you're on TikTok and stuff like that, how are you obviously consuming for escapism, but like learning and developing as well?
Yeah, it's hard. I can't really watch movies anymore without thinking,
Yeah.
"Oh, that scene's good," or "That scene's good," and I'll put it straight in my notes, or I'll be sitting on the couch with my girlfriend or a friend or someone like that, and they'll be like, "Oh, you're on your phone." I'm like, "No, just working." Or you save that many things on TikTok or Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, whatever it may be. Um, but I also love that part of it. I think that's really good and exciting. And um, I'll always think, oh, I could use this clip for this if this situation tends to happen. And 8 times out of 10, the situation never arises. I've been sitting on one meme for 10 years that I want to use and I can't use. So, um, yeah, it is hard, but it's a work on.
And how key is preparation? Like I feel like all the good people I talk to are super prepared. Like they're just like on it, and they're disciplined. Like, is that something that you always had naturally, or did you have to work on that?
Oh, I definitely had to work on it. I think from the planning aspect, you have to plan well and prepare well, but you also have to kind of be reactive and pretty agile in a way. I think social media, and especially the way sport works, is things change so quickly. So you could have one piece of content scheduled ready to go, and then something in a game happens, and your whole everything changes. So it is hard, and it's a balance of being prepared, but also getting ready to adjust and having things like maybe you have a plan B, plan C, um, especially when it comes to sport and elite sport, because results dictate a lot of the content, I guess. Player performance dictates a lot of the content. So it's quite a challenge at times to be versatile, but I think you got to be versatile, but also obviously prepare pretty well. And I'll go into any given game, especially at GWS. I probably went into any given game with two or three, maybe four or five meme options, or content options at the end of the game. Or I have things saved. If Toby Green did this, I was ready to go. Or if Jesse Hogan did this, I was ready to go. Um, so yeah, it's probably a little bit of over planning in a way, but you also kind of have to go, well, I'll suck it up and I'm not going to use 9 pieces of content I've already done. I'm going to have to make fresh content because Toby went and did this. So, but again, though, that's part of the fun of social media, and that's what keeps it exciting and fresh, and no day's the same.
Is there like a too risky folder where it's like this would absolutely kill it, but like we can't like do that? I'm sure there's been a few moments like that.
Yeah, there's been a few that I've put together and shown the higher ups at a club, and pretty quickly get, no, Jacob, and then you kind of put your tail between your legs and walk back away. But you understand that it's the brand that you're representing, and it's not just me. It's something that means a lot more, especially down here as well. So um, it is a fine line, but again, you got to naturally start to push it, and eventually you're going to find it and cross it, and you step back and apologize. But um, no, that's part of the fun as well. I think a lot of people engage with it. Once you slowly can build, like you can't just come in red hot and start potting shots at clubs and things like that. You kind of got to work towards it, which is also part of the fun.
I'd love to talk about like storytelling, like what you think audiences connect with, and yeah, maybe things you've learned across the years where you went into something thinking something completely different and had a different outcome and stuff like that. Like, what do you think are the key sort of things to think about when it comes to storytelling and like showcasing the players?
Yeah, I think there are so many angles. I think you obviously have the natural angles that arise in elite sport, whether that be documenting a player's rehab journey from an ACL or a serious long-term injury or something like that. But then another key aspect of storytelling is kind of, again, going back to the previous question, like preparing. So I think one of the perfect examples at GWS is probably 2 or 3 years out, you start banking content on the likes of Callan Ward, because he's pretty close to the end. So how can you bank content that that when he ever makes that decision, if he ever made the decision, which he eventually did, but you're ready to go, and it's not, oh shit, let's go get 15 years worth of Callan Ward footage and put it together. You're like, well, the story's kind of already there for us. We've already banked the content. Now we just need to put it together. Or we had Phil Davis, who was another inaugural giant and was getting to the back end of his career. And we sat down with him at the start of the year and said, can we we're going to follow you this year. We don't know if it's your last. If it's not, that's fine. But we want to follow you throughout the year, talk to you at different stages, visit key people in your life. When we go across to Adelaide, let's talk to your family. Let's talk to your wife. Let's talk to these key people that have been part of your footballing journey. So when you do make the decision to retire, we've got the content again. And then there's also the other side of things. Like I think the one down here in Tasmania, which will be really interesting, is we're already sitting down with key people at the club, talking through the process of player recruitment or the next jam of footy, the coach, because obviously you can't release it or say it now, but people will love that insight when we go live with the coach or with the GM. It's like, well, how did you get to this person? And it's like, well, here's the story for you, which again, when you kind of compare us in terms of expansion clubs to Tasmania and the Gold Coast, they didn't really have social media as a platform to utilize when they were telling their story in the beginning. So we're in such a unique position to do things differently and tell the story that people have never really heard before, which is incredibly exciting. So, yeah, there are so many different aspects of storytelling, to be honest. And another one would be results. I think the Giants do a really good job, especially of telling stories of key games and things like that. And they are really good at with their access to like the inner sanctum, I guess. And Adam Kingsley, credit to him, he's got an open door policy. So whatever he says can go. And I think we saw that with the Channel 7 documentary on the Giants last year. His sprays are scary, but it's incredible insight for fans to see. And then when you can go back and be like, wow, the Giants end up winning that game, like it's an unbelievable story that fans get to see. And I think the game's moving in that direction where storytelling is becoming probably at the forefront of a lot of this content. But yeah, again, it's just an important part of what social media is.
Oh, I think of stuff like Drive to Survive and
Yeah.
things like that, where it captures a whole new audience because you care about the people. And at the end of the day, like it is people. And if you're invested for a different reason, then that's a good thing too. It's like, I really want this person to win, or I want to see this outcome happen. And rather than these like TV shows and movies now, we can actually follow along with things that are actually happening in real life and just get that sort of version of storytelling, which makes you connect way more. Hey, and I think those type of insights people really want to see, and like being vulnerable, and being open to even the bad stuff, I think gains way more trust, hey, than just showing the highlight reel or, the PR package where you're like, oh yeah, cool,
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a balance. Like there's got to be a place for that kind of stuff, and that's what people want to see as well. But social media is changing, and you've got to adapt with it. So the storytelling part is an amazing part.
And players you're seeing like more receptive now, where it's like, because it's hard enough playing footy, but then all this other stuff that goes on with it, I feel like that's what people forget. Like footy's hard, and
Yeah,
especially if you're not a lock player, in that, like, there's so much pressure and anxiety. You got people who are like constantly like supporting you, or want, you know what I mean? Like there's so much stuff that goes along with being a professional athlete, and then to do this and capture that, like I feel like it's a lot to think about. So having people like you who can actually, like, I think, like you said, like it's trust. Hey, it's like having that relationship and chemistry with people where you can draw out that vulnerability that just really helps, rather than feels like you're exploiting. You know what I mean?
yeah. Oh, absolutely. And again, I think you got to tailor the content to the individual. I think not everyone wants to be in content or feature heavily in content or do this and that. Like you got to, like we have some players both in Tasmania and at GWS where social media and content wasn't their favorite thing to do. So you pick your chances and utilize them. And sometimes you lean into, Callan Warden never wants to be on camera or things like that. But then you have players such as, you've got your Connor Idens and Tom Green who are happily, put their hand up to be in content and do things. So you kind of tailor it to the individual. And I think a lot of people, especially athletes, you're right, like it's a highly emotional industry. So picking the right time as well. Like you don't want to go get a player that's necessarily not in the greatest form or injured to go do this content. All right, let's go pick this player, they're in good form, or this player's young. This is an opportunity for him to get his profile out there or her profile out there. So how can we do that? Which is a really nice little avenue as well for a lot of people. So I think it's different on every individual. And you have, we had Clayton Oliver come to the Giants in my last few months there. And he obviously has probably a bit of a unique relationship with the media in terms of the Melbourne fishbowl. And, he can't really move too far without a camera on him. And then he gets to Western Sydney and there's not many cameras in your face. So we wanted to do a bit of content when he got there about, kind of taking the mickey out of all the attention he was getting, and kind of explained to him that this is like, we're laughing with you, like we want to like tell this story, we're not going to like laugh at you. And he was like, oh, this is unique, it's perfect, let's do it. And then put his hand up and bought straight into it, which is unbelievable in the video. I think it's got over 1 million views or something like that now. So yeah, I think you just got to tailor it to the individual, and then content can be an incredible thing for the individual athletes.
It's funny to think about what the future is going to look like in terms of this, because I can only see it going one way, where traditional like mainstream TV that's going to obviously showcase this sort of stuff for a little while, but it's going to look so different in terms of access and what people see. And I feel like with change, there's always going to be haters, but it's just about like, I feel like this is a change for good, because like you can control a bit of, there's just more, it doesn't feel like school where you have to go and play by these rules anymore. It's like the ones who are colouring outside the lines are the ones who are winning.
Yeah. I think it's also nice that there's a balance of both. I think, there's definitely a spot. I think Dan Gorringe, I watched a clip of him saying it the other day, that there is a spot for that traditional media, and that's a lot of people are going to still engage with that, and I engage with that personally as well. But there's this new platform and new kind of ideology around what social media can be and can do for the game, and sport in general, or the athletes or the community or whatever it may be. So you're right. Like, I think it'll change pretty quickly and pretty dramatically, but yeah, and I'm eager to be part of it and hopefully do some cool things.
Like alternative commentary and stuff, you can see what things are happening overseas, and you can kind of see how stuff would play out here. And I still think there's so much room, like to grow. And I think like at this stage, I feel like there's lots of shows coming up, but I think like the ones with substance will be unreal. Like if you can like be one of those key shows in the early days, I feel like that can really set yourself up. And starting to see now with everyone's different points of view and what they're building out and different visions and things, you can sort of see this industry just becoming pretty wild, with even just opportunities. Even in brand world, where I work, it's like there's opportunities to get involved in sports and athletes that brands probably didn't think they could have this type of access. So it's just funny how everything I feel is going to play out from here on in.
Oh, it's so interesting. It'd be great.
And what about like AI? Like obviously the last couple of years has just been fucking wild. Do you use it in any part of your workflow or anything like that?
Not too much, to be honest. Like, I kind of like leaning on, I guess, from a graphics point of view, I like leaning on the creative talent we have at GWS and now at the Devils as well. And it's a unique thing, because a lot of people don't really resonate with the AI content, and they don't connect with it. They like, especially nowadays with there's normally a tag on it or something like that. It's like made with AI. And whether it's good content or not, people are not going to engage with it because they don't like it. Well, that's what I see already anyway. But I think it definitely has a place in terms of some aspects of social media. I think from a creative point of view, I think I'd still really like to see that human side of things. And I think it will be an interesting one to navigate the next few years, because it's just going to get bigger and better. So fingers crossed it doesn't take all our jobs.
No, I don't think it will at all. I think it's just different tools, hey, and just different resources for people to do stuff. And I still think the most creative wins. And I think like creativity is the meta. Like even when you think about like you setting this path for like humor in an AFL and competition now, and other sort of clubs popping up and sort of loving what you're doing and sort of following that formula. Like, how do you engage with competition and stuff like that? I'm sure it's like a healthy balance, or maybe not.
No, I love it. I think the more clubs that can engage with each other, the better, to be honest. I think that was a really fun part of the last few years at GWS, was engaging with these other clubs, whether some clubs didn't obviously like it too much, and your Swans and your Collingwoods, they didn't really want to do much with us. But, we had some incredible content meetings and ideas with the Gold Coast Suns, and I think clubs that are aligned in what social media can do for them, especially the Gold Coast, I think that we're pretty similar in terms of the markets we're in. How can we stand out and do things differently? We don't have the history behind us that those other clubs had. So that was where, a concept like the Expansion Cup is born. It's just a way of bringing a little bit more attention to the game. It's lighthearted. You get your players to buy in, and you have Toby Green and Aaron Cadman saying, their dream was growing up to play in the Expansion Cup, and you kind of just taking the mickey a little bit and leaning into the side of things where it's not that serious is great. And I think a lot of clubs are starting to get to that point where they'll engage with each other. And Dan Gorringe is probably a big part of that as well, getting to every club, and clubs like to work with him. So no, I think it's an exciting space, and hopefully more of it happens. To be honest, I'd love to work closely, especially the next few years with Tasmania. I think there's a pretty unique opportunity to create some rivalries, but then also create some friends and allies within the competition, and do some unique content.
Friendly feuds. I think that's actually like having a little insight into the music industry and understanding how they sort of set up stuff like that. It's like it makes sense. You know, there's a healthy respect, and then yeah, I think it's important to be able to poke fun and have a bit of a laugh and just build that type of interest, because when something bad happens, I feel like we're trying to find ways to how can we elevate this to make people care a bit more, how to, you know, there's a genuine hatred between this and telling those stories. And I think like having those relationships open where you can chat with those people to bring it out in a really good fashion, I think is like so important. Hey, like building a
Yeah.
vibe.
Oh, vital, vital. And I think again, hopefully, yeah, Tasmania can start to lean into that a little bit more, um, with some healthy rivalries.
What's an underrated like skill in your job? Like something that you're just like that's pretty handy.
Good question. In terms of content, I actually think one of the most underrated skills would be like just connecting with people. To be honest, I think relationship building, especially in a social media role, is really important, and that's not just athletes. That's with the supporter base as well, and talking to them and learning their story, and then learning what they want. Because at the end of the day, your members and your fans are probably the most important people at the football club, um, or the brand or whatever it is. So I think for me, that's what I would like people to focus on a little bit more is getting out there. And I think we have a thing that the Devils like answer the call. So that's, you obviously we're a startup, so you go and do things that aren't necessarily in your role title. And you just learn, I guess, what other people at the club do, and you get a bit more respect for what they're doing. But then you also get out and you go to fan events or things like that. I think 99% of the club at the Devils would have been the mascot already. So just getting out, you get to meet different people, you get to learn what they want, you get to learn what they engage with, what they don't want to engage with. So I think that would be probably one of the most valuable things that I'd suggest.
Mate, I love that. I think like when you can look through like a fan's eyes and how they can perceive things and really seek to understand them, I feel like that just like that's unheralded loyalty. And I think like even like thinking about sponsors and stuff, like if players go to sponsor events and are really like present and give people time, that adds so much more value and stock into the brand that you're
Absolutely.
building. Like I think that's what people underestimate, you know, like little things like remembering names and being there and just showing that you care, like rather than just say shit, like lead through the actions. I feel like
Oh,
it's just on a skyrocket. Hey,
absolutely. And I think that probably not even from a content point of view, but from a athlete point of view, I think some of the older players and maybe, you kind of get used to being put on a pedestal a little bit, but I think they sometimes can forget the impact they can have with just a simple conversation. I think what was really good at the Giants is they kind of knew the market they were in. They were like, if we go and spend 5 minutes with this kid, he might want to play or she might want to play AFL footy, which is going to grow the game in Western Sydney, or they might become a Giants fan because I've kicked the ball with them at a random oval for 5 minutes. Like, I think there are so many different avenues that players kind of forget that they're incredibly powerful to grow the game. And you're right, like a simple hello. Like I remember from way back when I was at the AFL in Sydney, one of my first weeks, Stephen Canelio came in, and it wasn't he's a guest speaker, and he came in, and it wasn't just a here's Stephen Canelio, the Giants captain, sit down talk. It was he got around to everyone in the room, shook their hands, introduced himself, even though everyone knew who he was. And it, like it was a simple interaction, but that stuck with me really well, and that was probably one of the things that drew me to GWS. I was like, wow, that's really impressive. Like if that's the standard, I want to be part of that. Um, so just little things like that, I think they go a long way.
100%, man. I remember we used to be based up in Windy Hill in Essendon where the Bombers would train back in the day. And Andy Lovett would come and play cricket with us on the Oval at lunch. And we're like, that's just like things like that. I don't think people understand how much that carries, like word of mouth and someone like even when something shit comes up, like your friend might be saying, oh, and then you're like, nah, he's actually a good dude. You know,
Yeah.
that carries a lot of weight, I feel like. And like, yeah, there's a lot of pressure being a public figure too. You know, like I'm sure like with people wanting to know your every move, I found that a little bit weird in like the journalistic point of view, like wanting to know every little detail about people's lives. But like
Yeah.
it is a fine balance though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's hard, and you can see why some athletes, especially like the bigger names, you're right. They're under a microscope essentially. So um, you can understand why at times they don't want to talk to everyone or say hello because some people might have an agenda that they're not aware of. So it is a balance, but yeah, I think it's still an incredibly powerful tool.
I love that, man. I love that. What about like hardest part of your job, you reckon?
Um, I think, to be honest, there's probably two things, and one we've already spoken about. It's probably that work-life balance. Like you just can't really switch off, and I'm probably the worst at it. I hate it. I was probably pretty burnt out when I left GWS. I took 2 months off in between Giants and the Devils, and for the first 3 weeks, I don't think I relaxed because I was kind of like something's missing. I need to scroll. I need to post something. But and then I learnt, the last month and a half, I was like, well, it's pretty good actually when I don't have to check my phone every 5 seconds. But um, I think that would probably be one of the challenges. And then the other challenge is probably the emotional toll. And I don't know if that's just me or um, other people that work in sporting organisations. We've already touched on that. It's a pretty emotional industry. So you ride the highs and lows pretty closely to the athletes. I think in 2023 when we lost the prelim to Collingwood by a point, that was like, it was the funnest year of my life. Like, it was an incredible rise from the Giants, and then yeah, you get so close to the ultimate prize, and you fall 1 point short in a prelim, and Collingwood fans definitely let you know about it. But that was hard. I remember getting back on the bus, and there were players in tears, and the majority of the staff were in tears as well. Like we were so connected, and the club is still so connected that you got to ride the highs and lows. And um, I guess that was probably a point that Phil Davis was really good at kind of balancing that. He'd always be like, you're never going as good as you think, and you're never going as bad as you think. So just take a breath and take it in, because and I think that's important as well because it's an unbelievable industry. So that would probably be the challenge. Is I'm a quite emotional person as well. So when we lose, I'm filthy, and obviously I can't do anything about it. Nor would I want to. I'd probably lose by more, but yeah, I feel like that's quite a challenge, and that's something I've had to navigate a little bit.
Oh man, it's hard. Because like the highs are really good, you know, and you want
Yeah,
to stay there forever. And it's like, but I think like when you think about it as like, it's like a big book, you know what I mean? Like this is just
yeah,
one chapter. Like it's just, and tomorrow happens, and you know what I mean? But it's hard not to get caught up in like, especially with sport, because it's like you were saying, it's so emotional. There's so many people invested. You feel like this responsibility, you know, and I just, like, I don't know. I just feel like, yeah, but to have that skill set, I think like, really, really good. But what about like you personally, like you growing your brand? Was it like intentional, or has it just sort of happened that way? And now it's just like, yeah, how's that been? And like, is it different than putting stuff out there in terms of just like branded stuff with work?
yeah. It's unique. I definitely didn't happen on purpose. You don't really get into the industry of being a social media admin with eyes on getting eyes on yourself. I kind of just think because the Giants did it so differently that people were kind of invested in and interested to see who was behind the keyboard, I guess, in a way. And Broden Kelly, he reached out first and was like, "Who's your admin?" And I just replied, "Oh, like my name's Jacob. Why?" Kind of bit confused. And then I went on his podcast, and from there it kind of took its own journey, which is quite unique. And yeah, even a few of the boys at the Giants, they gave me a hard time. We'd go to gather round, and I'd be walking past with Toby Green, and someone would say hello to me instead, and he was like, "What is happening? This is so stupid." Or people would come up and ask for photos with me instead of Tom Green at the airport, like just bizarre things. But no, to be honest, I kind of like I enjoy that as well because you do get to meet some pretty incredible people, and you get I've been lucky enough to get some pretty cool opportunities because of it, and that I'm forever grateful for, especially the Giants, what they did for me. But it is quite unique. But again, it goes back to that connection pieces. because my name's there aligned with the content, then I get to talk to fans about what they want. And, there's not many days that I don't talk to someone that has an idea. And 9 times out of 10, they're actually pretty useful. There's a few memes I probably wouldn't use, but um, I think that's an incredible thing. And yeah, it is quite a unique situation. And you find out pretty quickly if people don't like the content and they know your name. But the other way, like, if you do produce something that's all right, then people get around you, which is nice as well.
And how important is like a thick skin then? Like when you're getting feedback on yourself rather than like your work, I feel like that must hit a little bit different.
Yeah, it's unique. It's funny because I normally present to all the athletes around, I guess, social media safety and not reading things and not going to your requests and things like that. And 9 times out of 10, for especially for the male athletes, it's, oh mate, you didn't have 30 disposals, my multi failed. Like, just like things that players wouldn't even necessarily engage with anyway. But there are a lot of safety measures now with Meta and Twitter and things like that you can put on that protect yourself a little bit. And you do have to have a thick skin, I guess. For me, it's not really something that's ever bothered me, to be honest. I don't encourage it, but I definitely don't shy away from going back at a few people. But it's all part of the fun. And people, again, they're emotional. It's an emotional industry. They ride their highs and lows with their club, just like I do. Sometimes you just got to be a little bit careful. But yeah, it's not something that really impacts me, but I have spoken to a lot of athletes that it does impact them. And yeah, then you go through the safety features of turning comments off, or you can't get message from certain people, things like that. You can hide certain words. But yeah, every individual is different, I think.
Because that's important too, because you want to be able to showcase without feeling like you can't. Like if you're a Christian Petrarca and you copping all this hate, but hey, like I'm doing a lot of different stuff. Like I need to get stuff out there. Like you'd feel kind of like trapped sometimes, wouldn't you? So to have these different tools available where you can just set boundaries in place, because no doubt it'd eat up at you. Like I'm sure after anything, you're keen to hear like feedback. What do people think? And if it's good,
absolutely.
And if it's shit,
yeah.
Like I remember Brendan Favola talking about that. He used to just look at big footy forums after every game and just like read every single troll comment about what his game was like. Fuck, couldn't say I wouldn't do the same, but like it can't be good for you.
No, it couldn't be good for you. And even at GWS, we had certain players that if you had a loss or something like that, they wouldn't go near their phone for a couple of days, or they wouldn't read the comments. But then, yeah, similar to Fev, like you have vice versa, you have players that would just go read every comment. And it's just not healthy. Like if you do it after a win, that's fine, but there's got to be a balance. So I probably wouldn't do it either way. But yeah, it is a hard one for the athletes to navigate, especially.
Jacob, mate, I bloody love this chat. I reckon we've got to get you back on for round 2 again, and just see where the Devils are at and how you're tracking, mate. But good luck with everything, mate. Stay warm and, yeah, pumped to drop this chat, mate. Loved it.
Thank you, mate. Thanks for having me.